Ladies and gentlemen, this is KageKaze. I still have a couple Witch Doctor videos left to upload, but since they're pre-recorded and they're not up yet, a few things have happened since that I kind of wanted to go over and make a quick video on. Specifically, two things have happened here in the Diablo community. One is that Blizzard has announced plans to change Magic Find and is asking community input. And the second is that Force of Force Strategy Gaming has decided to call it quits on Diablo 3 content. Well, let's go over each one in turn, shall we? Let's start with the first bit of news that I caught up with, which is the Magic Find solution. So, what's been going on lately is that Blizzard doesn't like the idea that people are swapping their Magic Find before killing a monster. Not specifically, let me be clear on that, not specifically the idea that people are doing it, but specifically the idea that people that don't want to do it are doing it because they feel that that is the best way to get ahead and the only way to basically keep up, as it were. So the discussion they're having is they don't want these players that are kind of stuck in the middle, you know, getting in the crossfire here. You know, you see these players, they see everybody else doing it this way, and they're like, oh, well, that's the only way, that's the way I need to do it. And that's not necessarily the case. I personally don't keep a Magic Find set in my inventory, and I don't swap it out during a fight. I have a Magic Find set in my stash that I will use for content that I feel that I can clear with it. It is technically a farming set that I put on, and I farm through certain parts of content in order to get items. I haven't really used it a lot, but I have pulled it out on occasion, and I'm still building it, as I just really don't have really good stats on some of the gear yet. But you definitely see people that are doing it. They're kind of, and I'll have my own opinions on it, and I'll go over that. But I want to first go over what Blizzard's talking about as far as Magic Find. To combat this, to get people to not feel like they have to do this anymore, they've given us three options, and they're asking the community what we think. Now, keep in mind, they have said that this is not a majority rule. They're not going to take a look at everything and say who voted the most for which solution. They're basically giving us 5 options that they're saying, hey, these are 5 things we could do. Not necessarily 5 things we are going to do or that we want to do. And what they're going to do is see how we feel about each one. And by looking at the reactions to each one, they can find a solution that should be able to encompass most players and how they want to play the game. So option 1 is setting a magical find cap. They're basically saying they could set a Magic Find cap, something like 100%, between 100 and 200%. Nephilim Valor provides about 75%, so you would only really need about 25, somewhere between 25 and 125 to reach this new hard cap. Everyone could find ways to hit the cap for Magic Find percentage on their gear and then stop. So if you're at level 60, you don't need a lot. If you're lower than 60, you would need a bit more, of course. But usually lower than 60, they're not farming in, you know, pure Magic Find gear. It depends on if you found lower item sets with Magic Find on it. I personally don't care for this one. Now, they've got their own pros and cons here. But I'll talk about this one and what I don't like about it. Back at World of Warcraft, there was a stat called Defense. And part of the gameplay of being a tank was to get a certain amount of defense and then stop. And then if you tried to get more defense, it was wasted. And other stats would be better. The problem is some items that were upgrades would be considered worse because they would lower your defense underneath this cap. If you weren't at the cap, you were going to die, essentially. And so you had to game it. Now, this isn't exactly the same thing. You're not going to die from losing Magic Find, but it does kind of create this awkward mechanic of I need a certain amount of Magic Find, and I have to kind of game it up and down. Honestly, I don't think that kind of solution really works well. And I think they could do better. And they've got other options, so we're going to look at those. That one, not my personal preference. I think a lot of the community is actually against it, especially because capping Magic Find in general doesn't feel right, because people want to be able to get perfect rolls on every item that have Magic Find. You want to try and get that theoretical max Magic Find percent, and when you do, you're going to start raking in those rare items. That's what feels good, not capping it. That doesn't feel good. Solution 2 is to slowly adjust the Magic Find over time. So when you equip an item with Magic Find, they won't change the Magic Find right away. Instead, your Magic Find slowly drifts towards the target, potentially something like 1% every 3 seconds, something like that. If you open up your character details sheet, you can see the number change, say 8%, 9%, 10%, etc., etc. Even though you could, in theory, switch to Magic Find gear for the killing blow and get a few extra percentages, it's probably not worth it. Well, the good news here, as Blizzard sees it, is that there's a high degree of visibility. You can look at your character sheet and see the change. I think the bad thing here is that not every player knows to look there. They think putting on the item instantly gives you that that type of stat, and honestly, for everything else, yes, it does. So I don't think I really like that solution either, in the sense that it's kind of a slow ramp-up time. The question there would be, what would happen when you remove it? Do you remove it and it gets taken away instantly, and then you put it back on, and then it starts to creep back up? So what if I accidentally move an item and I lose that Magic Find? So you do have that con. So there's good and bad there. I think that's a reasonable idea, especially because it will be on the character creation sheet. But then again, one of the cons that they did mention is that those players that are stuck in the middle that feel like they have to do this might still feel that way, because they're still going to get, maybe not all of their Magic Find, but they're going to get some of it. So all that really does is push out how, like, instead of, you know, killing the monster, getting him down to like maybe one finishing blow and swapping everything out, you might just do it a little sooner. Option 3 is to use average Magic Find percentage or your lowest Magic Find percentage of the last 5 minutes. So they could sample the Magic Find percentage every 30 seconds or so. Create a moving average or use the lowest Magic Find percentage that have been seen on your character. So it has some of the same benefits of the last solution, number 2, and it's harder to game, simply because now you will always be using the lowest percentage. So let's say I had no Magic Find on me and then I put my Magic Find gear on. Well, for those 5 minutes, I'm still going to be at 0. Simply because that was what my average was. If I had some Magic Find gear on, I will still have some Magic Find. The problem here is that it's not easy to communicate to the user what's going on in the background here. And there's been a lot of talk about hidden modifiers, hidden coefficients. For example, life on hit. When you hit a creature with life on hit, if you've got 1,000 life on hit, depending upon what skill you're using, you're not going to get 1,000 health back. For example, the Barbarian skill Frenzy has been estimated to be around 0.7 or 70%. That means that you're only getting about 70% of your life on hit per hit of Frenzy, but Frenzy has a high attack speed, so it kind of evens out in the end. So they have hidden modifiers to balance the game, but those modifiers are never adequately conveyed to us, the player. People have to go out and find it, and then you have to go and find the forum posts that somebody wrote up on it. I mean, there are charts out there with the whole life on hit thing, and I found a couple of them, but it's not the easiest thing in the world to get to. So honestly, I do kind of like this moving average thing, because it helps those that want to keep using Magic Find on their gear to farm, and it hinders those that want to swap out their Magic Find to get the last bit of Magic Find at the end. Option 4 is the more extreme version. It is to swap your gear, or when you swap your gear, your Magic Find is disabled for 3 minutes. It's completely effective at discouraging gear swaps, allows you to swap your gear when you find an upgrade, and the 3-minute duration should be short enough that when you kill the next elite pack, after you get an upgrade, you should have your Magic Find back. Basically it's a low duration. So 3 minutes should be enough to keep you from swapping out before killing a pack, but short enough to keep you from worrying about swapping your gear before a big fight. I used the example of me fighting the Butcher when I was first farming Inferno Act 1. I did not have Magic Find gear, but I had a different set of weapons on me. And I had my Life on Hit weapon, which had low DPS, and my regular weapons for high DPS. When I was using my Life on Hit at the time, I could not kill the Butcher because I would hit the Enrage, and the Enrage was slightly bugged in that he did more damage than he should have. And even then, even if it wasn't bugged, I just probably didn't have the survivability to deal with that. I could kill him with my DPS set, simply because I knew his mechanics, I could avoid his damage, he wasn't really a major threat. So I swapped weapons then. If I were to do that with one of these systems, my magic find could be impacted in some way. For example, the zero out would have zeroed me out. It would have, even though it had no magic find, it was just a different weapon, I would have lost my magic find for 3 minutes. Now, in that instance, because it was the Butcher, wouldn't have hit me too hard because I would have gone in. The fight usually lasts longer than 3 minutes. Even if it didn't last longer than 3 minutes, I could have comfortably waited 3 minutes because Nephilim Valor lasts about a half hour. With the average one, I probably wouldn't have been affected at all because none of my magic find would have changed. I think my idea is, I like the idea somewhere between option 4 and option 3, where you, somewhere between the zero out and the average magic find duration. The big problem with they say with the zero outs system is that players who are unfamiliar with the system may open up details and see their magic find as 0% and not understand why. They could mitigate this by making the 0% colored with a tooltip stating the countdown until your magic find would work again, as well as what the magic find would be at the time that it expires. So they're trying to look at transparency. They really want to make sure that any system they choose is going to be transparent and visible to us, the player, without us having to go too far out of our way to figure out what's going on. Now the last option, number 5, is gear swapping, interacts with Nephilim Valor. I don't really care for this one either. I'm mixed on it. I just don't think I would really want to lose a stack of Nephilim Valor right before a big boss just because I had to swap out my weapons. Again, citing the example with the Butcher. They say there's a whole class of solutions that interact with Nephilim Valor. For example, they could remove a stack of Nephilim Valor when you swap a piece of gear. It stops the gear swapping for a kill and still allows a player the option to do so. But again, citing my Butcher example, that would have made me lose. In the current system of Nephilim Valor, I would have lost 1 rare. And that doesn't feel good. Just because I couldn't kill him with my defensive stat? No. I don't really feel like interacting with Nephilim Valor is the right idea here. Blizzard doesn't either. According to the write-up here, I mean, they're offering it as a solution to see what people think, but they really don't look like they want to do that. Because looking at this, they're talking about how doing a system like that is going to so closely tie in Nephilim Valor with Magic Find that if they ever want to change a system in the future, you know, an expansion pack or something like that, they'd have to look at both systems. They would be so intricately tied together, and that is not a good idea. Now, there is an alternative that was mentioned on the Diablo fan forums. I'll try and get you guys a link. And they talk about where if you swap a piece of gear, if it has lower magic find, then that piece of gear would just simply give you the magic find, straight up. So let's say I have a piece of gear with 10, a piece of gear with 5. If I'm wearing the 10 and I put on the 5, I should just go down to 5. No problem, no questions asked. But if I try to go from the 5 to the 10, it should zero out, like option 3, I believe, the one where it zeroes out your magic find. Only it zeroes it out for that item slot only. Not your entire magic find, just that slot. So that way, I could get an upgrade, and I wouldn't be able to use the magic find right away, but I could still swap it out. By the time I get to my next elite pack, I should have it back. And if I do get an upgrade that has lower magic find, I'm not penalized. And for the example that I cited for the Butcher, if I swap my weapon, since no magic find difference has occurred, I wouldn't have lost anything anyway. I think it's an interesting idea, a great system. The problem is I'm just not sure that Blizzard has quite the technology in place in the Diablo 3 system to be able to track something that intricate, such as individual slots of gear and when they change. They said they posted it on the official Blizzard forum, so, you know, who knows? Blizzard will take a look at it, and maybe we'll see. Now, I mentioned earlier that this whole system was in place to stop players in the middle from feeling like they should change their to Magic Find gear to when they get a kill so they get items. I honestly think this has an additional benefit and something that I really don't feel right about. And that is being able to get your Magic Find without suffering the consequences of using Magic Find. What do I mean by that? I mean that currently you can fight a monster and nearly kill it with complete survivability gear, then swap out to this Magic Find gear and benefit from 100% of your Magic Find. Even though Blizzard is saying they don't mind this kind of gaming of the system, I personally just don't think it's quite right, because the whole idea of Magic Find is that you are giving up something. You are giving up a stat. You are giving up either your DPS or your survivability in order to get better items. And when you do it something like this, where you're carrying a whole set of Magic Find in your in your inventory there, and you're just swapping it out at the end, you're basically circumventing that. You're basically saying, oh, well, I don't have to lose anything to get my magic find. Now, granted, this is kind of overplaying it a bit in the fact that, yes, once you put on that magic find gear, you still have to kill the creature. But the truth is, 90% of the job has already been done using your previous gear. I just think that the system should reward those who have a set of magic find gear, and there are people on the forums that have talked about this, and there are people out there that do farm in gear that has a good mix of magic find and gear that's good for their stats. So they'll have, you know, say a barbarian will have their magic find with their strength and their vitality and all that, which is great. They're giving up something, but they still are choosing gear that is valuable to them and their class. Whereas just going for pure magic find, you might just forget whatever main stats there are and just pick whatever you need at the time. It really depends on how tough of a monster you're looking to kill. I'm sure that even those that quick swap gear are still trying to find ones that are good for their class. But again, if you're going to benefit from that magic find, I really think that you should have that magic find on you when you engage the creature, not just, oh, hey, he's about to die, boom. It's the same reason why they took the magic find away from chests. I really don't have a more elegant solution, but I think these 5 are ones worth looking at. I've expressed my interest between options 2 and 3. Honestly, the averaging and the zeroing. If they could make it work, make it transparent so that no one's confused, it might be a good system. Well, the last bit of news here, now that we've talked about Magic Find, is that Force of Force Strategy Gaming has decided to call it quits in Diablo 3. Now, he said he may be playing on occasion, but he's not playing as hardcore as he used to, and he cited his reasons. I'll give you a link to his video. It's about 10 minutes long, and I think throughout the duration of the video he's really trying to pinpoint why he feels this way, and I can kind of understand that. It's really a shame, I think, to see him go, but I will wish him absolutely the best. After all, Force's videos in the beta are what inspired me to do this and create my own. In fact, I kind of mirrored his style a little bit when I first started, and I think there are a lot of similarities there between some of the things we do, even some of the things we decide to cover. You know, Force it seems like a good guy, and I think I wish him the best with what he's doing, because honestly he's got a lot on his plate, to be honest with you, and I think that could be part of it. He's running his own website now, he's doing his own gaming news, you know, I think he has a good thing going for him. And I say I know kind of what he's going through because I did the same thing with World of Warcraft. I still like World of Warcraft, and I still think it's a great game, so I don't want anyone to think that because I quit World of Warcraft I think the game's crap. It's the same thing with Force. Just because he's quitting Diablo 3, he doesn't want people to think that he thinks the game is bad. He specifically says he thinks it's a very well-made game. He just has certain issues with it. I think we all have certain issues with it, and you know, same thing with World of Warcraft. I think everybody has specific issues with whatever game that they happen to play, whether they love it or hate it, you know. And World of Warcraft, for me, it came down to I was treating it more like a chore. I liked the game and I loved the people I was playing with, but I was doing the same thing over and over again, and I realized, you know, there were other things I wanted to do, and I wasn't having as much fun with the systems itself and what I was doing, because I was really treating it like a job, in the fact that I would come on, pretty much do the same routine over and over again. There were other things I could have done, but there were personal reasons why I didn't do them, one of which was a monetary issue. So yeah, I had my own reasons for eventually leaving. I still think the game is good, and I think Force kind of feels the same way in regards to Diablo 3. Now, when you look at his video, one of the things that he mentions that I think eventually turned him away was the use of he says the real money auction house, but I think it could have been with any part of the auction house if you amass enough gold. As he bought some items to help him clear Inferno, and then what happened was he wasn't finding upgrades, and there was no reason to keep playing. The whole point of Diablo in general, the Diablo series in my opinion, is the hunt for items. And this is very specifically why when I was playing my Barbarian, even prior to 1.03, when it was even harder for me, when I couldn't even clear a few monsters in Act 2, I was adamant about not going out and just buying a whole bunch of high-end gear, because my problem with doing that was that I would just completely lose the desire that I had to continue forward. And even now, I'm not finding very many upgrades. A few of my upgrades have come from friends and people I play with, and they've been great upgrades, but they're mostly been found. They're not uber items by any extent, you know? So, I know what he means. And I think once you get that point, that yeah, the game doesn't become as much fun. Now, I think one of the big problems here is we're all expecting so much content, but you have to think. When I was playing Diablo 2, and I was playing Diablo 2 extensively, Lord of Destruction had been out for a while, and there were, well, I played it before then, but I mean, when I was really, playing it the most, I think, was when Lord of Destruction was out, and you had that additional act, you had all sorts of different items to find. There was really a huge amount of content to go looking for, and there were multiple classes, like 7 classes, I believe it was, for Diablo 2. Just off the top of my head, I'm not going to worry about counting it. That's a lot of classes to go through the game in its entirety over and over again. We're seeing the beginning of Diablo 3. There's really not a lot there yet, but there's going to be. And one of the things that's missing too is also the PvP. So for a lot of people, they already they have their item hunt, they want to move on to something else. Some people really want to move on to PvP. I personally don't care one way or the other about PvP, but I honestly do believe that that is something that needs to get in there quickly so that some people have more things to do in the game. The other thing that I feel is that just because a lot of people are stopping from playing the game is I don't feel like the game is doing poorly. You cannot look at Diablo 3 like it's an MMO. You can't look at it like it's WoW. Alright? When WoW loses players, it's a bad thing because that's revenue loss. Diablo 3 is a one-time purchase game. Yes, there's an auction house. Yes, they get a little bit of revenue from it, but hardly anything at all. And really, the big thing here is how much time did you get out of the game? I personally have 190 hours at least on Diablo 3. For my purchase, I bought the collector's edition. That's $100. I'm still getting more than an hour's value out of every dollar I spent. You go to a movie theater and you're getting 2 hours for what, $10? $5 an hour? That's ridiculous. And you look at a game like this, I've gotten a lot of longevity out of it. I could stop playing the game right now and feel very satisfied about the experience I had because I got to play through quite a bit of the game. I enjoyed 90% of it. And the thing is I don't plan to stop. I've still got 4 other character classes to play through. And I'm just starting to make my video for the Witch Doctor. So I have a lot. I don't plan to quit anytime soon, but I do plan on looking at other games. So if my Diablo 3 coverage slows a little bit, it's not because I'm not interested, but it might also be because I'm trying to make sure I stay interested. I don't want to burn out. And I think that's part of it too. A lot of people are stopping, Force is stopping. There's a lot of burnout here. This game hasn't been out for maybe a month and a half. Almost 2 months. It's almost 2 months now. That's a lot of game time to pack into that short of a time period. That's, I think, an indicator that the game has done really well for itself. Now, a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that. But the truth is, I feel that the game plays very well. There are some issues. And there are some issues with, per se, Inferno and the eventual item find. And even Blizzard admitted, yes, the item find that they created, or the item hunt that they created, they intended to last longer than it has. And part of the problem there was that when they were doing it, they didn't factor in their auction house. That is the unfortunate part. But I personally get my joy and experience out of it. I avoid the auction house. I've seen some people ask there, well, why avoid the auction house? It's there. Well, I don't want to use it. I want to find my items. And I'm not saying that that's the way you should play, and I'm not saying that's the only way to play if you want to keep enjoying the game. I'm just saying that that's my personal choice. And I think that that helps me to enjoy the game, and that's what I did in Diablo 2. I would have people throw really good items at me sometimes, just randomly. You've probably been, if you ever played Diablo 2, you've probably been in a game where someone's just giving away free items. There you go. Have fun with it. Just because they either have a ton of it or they're duping. I don't care which. But I would still avoid it, just because I liked finding things. that sense of discovery is what keeps me going. Well, again, I wish Force the best of luck. I'll probably keep following him and seeing what kind of videos he puts out there. And I will continue to try and put out some Diablo content and see what other options there are out there. I am considering trying to do some other coverages on maybe some other free-to-play games, maybe give some people alternatives who may have been burnt out on Diablo. We'll see. I definitely look forward to any advice or suggestions if you guys have any other things that you might want to see coverage on. Maybe there's something you want to see that you're not sure about and you'd like someone else to look into it for you. Hey, let me know. You could do that in the comments below, but it's probably best to send, if you're going to do a request of that type, to send it to theshadowpost@gmail.com and let me know that way. That way I can kind of catalog it and keep an idea of what people are sending me. Alright guys, this is KageKaze. I thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time. The Witch Doctor videos should be up soon.